Hi everybody and welcome to the week. I'm going to help you get this week started off well. I've been working through the book of Isaiah. I think I've told you that in some previous posts, and just been hearing a lot of encouraging things from God and gaining insight to how God works in our world. And in particular, with all the turmoil that's taking place right now, it's been very encouraging to me to make sure I keep my eyes focused on the Lord and not on the circumstances that are happening around me. Now there's a section in Isaiah where God is dealing with King Hezekiah. Hezekiah has learned through the prophet Isaiah that he's going to die soon. He has this terrible infection and his life's about to end. And he pleads with God and begs God to extend his life. God hears his prayer and God sends a message to him through Isaiah that he's going to live 15 more years. And of course Hezekiah is delighted with this. But in the midst of Hezekiah's intercession for himself and pleading with God to extend his life and spare his life, he says some things that I have taken as my purpose for this coming week. And I want to read to you just a simple verse, Isaiah chapter 38, verse 3. When Hezekiah is praying, he says, "Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you and have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleases to you." Then he broke down and wept. And the takeaway for me as I was reading that, I was looking at Hezekiah's life and I thought, I need to live the same way. It was that prayer that moved God to extend his life. And so my focus this week is, first of all, to be faithful to God. Right? I try to be that every week, but especially focusing on just being faithful to God. There's so many other idols in our life that we can become faithful to, whether it's materialism or whether it's people and relationships that we are in with, or whether it's to our finances, etc. There are a lot of things that we can put our faith in and seek to be faithful to, and I'm not saying that's wrong. You should be faithful to your spouse, you should be faithful to your job, etc. But ultimately, I want to be faithful to God. Because sometimes in being faithful to God, we end up missing out on what the world offers us. Because the world sometimes wants a faith commitment from us that would pull us away from God, that would become dependent on what the world offers versus what God has to offer us. So faithfulness to God. Secondly, I want to be single-minded in my focus on God. Again, we live in a world filled with distractions, from everything that's on social media to the fears and the worries that come into our mind. I want to move all of that stuff out. I want to have a fixed point, as we talked about this past weekend in our message. I want that fixed point to be God. I want to stay focused. I want to be single-minded on Him. And then thirdly, I want to be obedient to God. Hezekiah says, "Look how I've obeyed you." I want to obey God on a daily basis. I want to do what His Word says. I want to stop arguing with God. When He speaks, I want to respond immediately. And then last but not least is humility. I want to be humble towards God. I want to live in a humble way. I want to make sure that I respect God, that I live in humility not only towards Him, but that I live in humility toward others, that I lift them up, that I lift God up rather than trying to lift myself up. So that's kind of my goal for this coming week, where I'm trying to put my energy, being faithful, being single-minded and focused, being obedient, and trying to live humbly. So maybe you want to consider that as well, or take one or two of those and make that kind of your focus, your prayer this week. Maybe even asking others to pray with you this week in that way, and see what God does in your life. See how He'll respond to you as He responded to Hezekiah. You're not brokering a deal with God. That's not what I'm advocating. But just saying to God, "God, this is who I want to be and how I want to live." And I believe God will indeed speak to you and reveal Himself to you in some very precious ways. Have a great week.